Hello, hello. This is the Chicas Plus Equals podcast, a place where two chicas from Eastern Europe navigate real life. We're talking health, habits, mindset, relationships, and everything in between. Join the girl talk.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Today we are doing a special episode. It's the week before Christmas or coming up to Christmas for some religions. So today we thought we're going to talk about friendship. We alluded to it last episode, and I think it's pretty fitting.
True, I would say so.
This is a very interesting episode because it's going to be a different one. We are going to have almost like a chit-chat situation since both Jovana and I have very different experiences when it comes to friendships. I would assume, I'm certain, there will be some useful information or something useful you can get from both of us throughout this episode. Okay, let's start talking about friendships. You've done one thing today that shows a lot of good friendship skill, which is you prepared a cake for your friend's Saint Day, like name day, basically, celebration. Which, to be honest, what better way of showing love than bringing food? At least
Yes.
my friends used to do that a lot.
Yeah, is it a common thing in England as well as in America? Because in America, it's a common thing
I
from what I see.
They do it all the time. We do it all the time. Actually, every time we hanged out with friends, there was food involved just because we kind of hang out in groups and we're all often a lot of people. So most of the time, the host at their expense would make a lot of food and then would chip in with like how much it costs to actually feed all of us because it's usually one person cooking for like a dozen of us. And because of those large groups, we'll bring snacks or we'll make something or a cake. Or I remember when I used to be part of an eco hub, people like they would always bring in something kind of like a picnic vibe, and they'll make like focaccia and breads and treats, healthy desserts, stuff like that. It was whenever I hang out with friends, there's often food involved just because we have like a very cozy way of hanging out.
Well, that's one of my, if I can say, goals, but intentions for next year. It was also the intention for this year, but something didn't go as planned. I mean, that's maybe an excuse, but we want to move out, as you know, and so
Mm-hmm.
hopefully next year is gonna be the year we move out, and I definitely want to host more just generally, and
Yeah.
have those chill, casual, relaxed hangouts that we can sit on the floor and just like I bake something maybe fast, like it doesn't have to be anything official, like a big, lunch, dinner, whatever, but just some snacks or something and to just chill, maybe chit chat, maybe watch something, maybe do, I don't know, a collage or whatever, like paint and to just enjoy. Because, oh my God, I want to have that more. I noticed that, I don't know if it's just people that I hang out with or if it's a cultural thing, but we don't do that often. Like when we decide to meet, it's okay, let's meet up in the center of the city. Let's meet up somewhere
Yeah.
in the city and just we're gonna go for a walk. We're gonna go to a cafe and like go back
Mm-hmm.
home. When we rarely go to each other's place, we've done that before much more, but now not so much. And I miss it. I
Yeah,
want
but
to
I feel
bring it
like it
back.
is 100%. I feel like it's definitely cultural. I think not cultural, but it has to do with the environment because most of the people in Eastern Europe live in apartments. And unless you have a very nice apartment, most people wouldn't host. But in the UK, most people live in houses. So there's a lot more space. And the house usually has, you have your bedroom that's separate from the living room, that's separate from the
Yeah.
kitchen. Like there's always that arrangement. And because of that, it's a lot easier to host because you have a designated space, have more space literally. Whenever we hang out, like my friend literally picks where he moves, thinking that he will have a dozen guests over. Sometimes he would think, do I have a spare bedroom? So space, it's a limiting factor. And even in the States, again, they have big houses, so it counts. And when
Even
we
their
were in the
apartments are
UK, yeah, in
small.
the
That's
UK,
cute.
I feel like the friends that hosted big parties in apartments were friends that lived in fancy apartments. I don't think we've had any. Like, if you live in a small place, you'd feel a bit more reserved to share
Yeah.
it, unless they're very close friends.
Yeah, or insecure to share it with multiple
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hoping next year is gonna be the year. But this, like as you said, baking something, preparing food for someone, I do agree it's the greatest show of love, and I experienced that. I think maybe it was the only time, but at least the only time if I can remember. Last year for my birthday, one of my close friends, I celebrated in the outdoors I did not expect this at all because no one ever done that. She brought cupcakes, muffins.
Mhm.
She brought muffins, and chocolate muffins. They were so nice, and it doesn't matter even if they were not. Like that thought that she brought them and baked
Mhm.
them to give them to me, and like we ate them there, and we also had, and it was such a lovely gift. I was more excited about those cupcakes when I saw them than the present itself.
Let's start giving some structure to this conversation. And let's start with, if you don't mind, giving us a view of how you view friendship over time. Like, what was your journey like in terms of quality of friendships, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I do. And I hope I'll answer the question correctly because I remember in kindergarten, at the very end of kindergarten, I met Maria, my best friend.
Oh my God, you know each other since kindergarten?
Yes, she came.
Wow.
She's from another city and she moved to my hometown when we were 5 or 6 years old, and she came to my kindergarten. And I remember my first memory of her is that she was like running around all crazy. We were just like all eating and just chilling. No one was hyped up. She was the only one like all over the place there. I didn't have any special thoughts. And then we started the same elementary school. At the beginning there was like a group of us, four of us. I would kind of not, I don't want to say switch friends, not in that way that I would choose, that I would have calculation. It
Favorite.
was just I was for part of the period closer to one friend, other part of the period closer to another friend, and Maria was always there. However, oh my god, that was one of the early memories from me like making friends with someone. She always said I was her best friend from basically the
Oh,
beginning. Yeah, but it took me a
territorial.
during oh my god, and it took me, oh my god, I was playing hard to get apparently, because it took me so long to say that she was my best friend, to say that to her. Even for me, I don't know why I was very, if I can say, philosophical about it. That was so
Mm.
important for me. If I say you're my best friend, like you're my, it means so much to me. It's not like we're just hanging out maybe more than other people. I don't know why it meant so much. I don't
I
know
think it's
now
good that it
consciously.
meant a lot. Oh my God, I love this. We are uncovering some very interesting things about Jovana, because if there's something that I've always wondered about you, Jovana, is how can you be such a good friend? You're an amazing friend. And I've always wondered, like, how does she do it? And I think the fact that you thought about these things so early, it's incredible. How were you thinking about it? Because I don't feel like most people even know where to start answering that question. Like when you were a
I
kid, at least.
maybe I was looking at some girls in the group and how they would always change friends. Like this time it was she was your best friend. Next time this was your best friend. Next time it was your best friend. And I didn't like that. I'm not saying that I consciously thought of it like that, but looking back
Mhm.
now, because I had a moment where I was a really good friend with a really close friend with one girl, and then we stopped talking, and then like
Mhm.
what, you move on to another one. I just didn't want, let's say, move on, and I didn't want to have another best friend, if I can say. So I was
That's interesting.
yeah, I was taking it a lot more serious.
It shows a lot of loyalty in a way.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I can say that one of the common compliments that I get from Maria, we're friends still this day, is the loyalty. And that she knows that I'm not gonna do something, rat her out, or do anything
Yeah.
to harm her, in any way intentionally.
Curious because this is only the beginning, right? You're obviously very conscious about your friend choices from kindergarten, and that's insane.
Elementary school.
Still very early. And then you notice these dynamics in the friend groups, or like the people around you, that they would keep moving from one friend to another, and then you somehow became this very loyal friend where if you chose a best friend, somehow you were very devoted to it. Like for example, it's been what, 23 years since you met Maria?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
incredible. That's my entire lifetime.
Yes. Damn, we've
Um
known each other for 2 decades. We have to celebrate that
yeah.
in a way.
That's really cute. Obviously, I'm sure have you had other developmental phases in friendships other than elementary school? Or you're just like, once you decided to be best friends with Maria, it was a done deal, no change needed afterwards. You haven't thought about it, like nothing happened after.
I was out of the market. Yeah, because oh my God, Maria and I had so many disagreements, so many fights. That's why it didn't. It took me. I didn't want to be like to call a best friend a person that I am having constant like arguments with, because we should get along. I thought that, should be good. We shouldn't fight. We had a lot because she's very, at least back then, she was very impulsive. She was very, yeah.
I'm like a Maria person. I know it. It's like I can get annoyed very quickly, be very opinionated, drive
Yes.
for my own ideas, and I'm right all the time. Like I do that.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And we have different ways of, let's say, fighting on quotes. When I'm angry, back then, how I behaved, when I was angry, I would just shut down. I would stop talking and I would just be silent. And you would know that there's something's wrong, which is not healthy. But her way of showing anger is yelling a lot, like talking very loudly, yelling, being very like explosive and expressive. That was something that was, because that was
Mhm.
not something that I've seen in my household, that we get
Oh,
angry in that way. And so I was like, there's something wrong with you. I don't know how, like, you have to do something with your anger, girl. Again, my way of dealing with anger was not healthy as well. But we had two different ways of, let's say, fighting with each other. And she would always get mad when I didn't want to fight, and so she didn't have anyone, to fight her back. And it
that's
was it was an interesting dynamic for a
yeah.
while there.
How was that phase like? That phase in itself holds so much information about conflict management. How did you go from having this more intense period where things weren't pink and still turn it into like reconcile and maintain the friendship?
I believe after elementary school, we started going to different high schools. We were even closer, actually, because we were older. We started going
Mhm.
out, having sleepovers, like chatting about different topics rather than just school. We became closer in that way, but it was good and healthy because we weren't seeing each other every single day and spending like 7 hours, in school when you're in the same classroom. So we would have that separate time and then also have the time together when we would meet with each other, or however often we would meet with each other. And then I guess with learning about yourself through different people, I would say that
Yeah.
helped.
You kind of had a person to go back to, once these experiences crystallize, and you can share them with each other and all that. That's
Yeah,
interesting that that space was the thing that helped.
yeah, because I guess it gave us we were a bit more mature.
Okay, I will share my story to kind of hint at phases. So how many phases did you go through when it comes to friendships? And obviously this is a hard one to say in a few minutes. So, but in my experience, I've had quite a lot of phases. I've always kind of been, at least when I was very young, I was very extroverted. So I was an extroverted kid. I would always make friends with people outside. But so I would have like a group of friends, and kindergarten, elementary school, I would always kind of be in those big groups. But unfortunately, I've also had like adverse experiences where I was bullied from a young age. So like elementary, it's also where it started. I remember I kind of defaulted to always having a handful of close friends, and then other friends that weren't as close. I was just basically part of groups. But from just being outside, playing in the neighborhood, I would always have at least three, like four close friends around. Most of the time, I don't know why, but it was always like the three lucky number. And from a young age, I also like my first best friend was an older girl, like 3 years older than me. And it seems like that pattern has stuck because most of my friends are older. You are older. My friend Tanya is older. Like a lot of friends of mine, my friend Alex is 5 years older than me, I think. So most of my closest friends are older. Even from a young age, I had some lessons that I had to learn and some maybe faults when it comes to friendship. I remember with my first best friend, I would often get jealous because she had a best friend of similar age. And I remember that being my first lessons in friendship, that jealousy doesn't really help at all. And I was also very attached to these friends because they would often be my protection from bullies. So it was this giant dynamic of codependent dynamic. But it was super fun and we had the best time. We'd always hang out, we'd be very imaginative and have these silly games. It was a wonderful time and very high quality friendships where you could share your experiences, you could learn, you can be yourself, which I absolutely adored. Then once that friendship kind of, it reached its maturation point, basically she went to another school and I went to my part. My second close friend, the group changed and I had another triad of friends. We're basically three of us all the time. And these were girls that I met in the neighborhood and we would always hang out still. During that time, going outside was the way I would make friends. And those were, again, fantastic friendships, very authentic. We would often, like, we had a thing for Nicki Minaj at the time. I think she had a thing for Nicki Minaj. And, like, we would always would pull pranks outside. We would have these silly challenges where we'd go outside in pajamas. We'd visit each other's house and talk about, she was, like, hanging out with boys a lot. So we talk about boys and this and that. And that was really nice. But then again, it reached a point where I had to go to a different high school. We changed a lot. We are friends, but it reaches a point where we notice our values are very different. And I had just moved to a different high school, and then she went to high school, whatever. And then the friendship broke because I think on the one hand, it was this difference in values and viewpoints, but I think there was also some ego involved and some jealousy involved in there that was not communicated properly. And that was another red flag lesson thing that I personally had to learn how to deal with, and that often comes up in friendships. So this was like second lesson. That was an interesting phase as well. Very good friendship. Oh, I was very attached to this friend again. It was in a way because she as well helped me a lot go through these difficult periods where I was bullied again. So it was kind of a matter of survival, more or less, for me to make friends. I didn't make it consciously, like I wasn't just, oh, I'm going to be friends with you, but she was a nice person and she would genuinely be kind. And because she was, I'd often be attracted to friends that, attracted in quotes, wanting to befriend people that were kind and I could feel safe around, because we were in a very unsafe environment where there were all these gangs around and random bullies coming from other. So I felt like, because I didn't naturally fit in those places, I was very happy to have those people in my life and those good friends that were protecting me. And then my third, again, I moved to a different place, a different triad, and a different best friend, and again, very close relationship for 4 years or so. At this time, I kind of learned, because I was making friends at school now rather than in my neighborhood. The social dynamic was a bit more complex. Like there were more people that I could talk to, more difficult at the same time. Again, I was also bullied at school because I was a very shy kid. That's the thing. I was a very shy kid and very innocent. And that's like the easiest target.
Yeah.
So even when I went outside, easy target. And when I went to school, easy target. But I couldn't help it. I was just a pacifist. So I made this best friend, a fantastic friendship that, again, I could be myself in. And it was there when I went through this phase of like boy bands and YouTubers, and we used to go to these meetups for this One Direction group, and
Oh,
we'd
wow.
have like we'd go matching and like matching t-shirts with our favorite YouTuber. Like it was a very fun friendship, and we had like these silly inside jokes, and I don't know how I managed to be so myself. But again, she was a very close friend where I used to have panic attacks, again, social anxiety, and she would also be there. I would still get that sort of protection. It's a common element, but I love that in every single one of my friendships because they were kind people. At the same time, at that time, I've noticed that I can make friends one-on-one very easily, but I couldn't quite be in the group anymore. Like I didn't know how to be part of a group at that time. You could say it was partly because I didn't resonate with those groups at all. There were often groups that were focused more on status and being rude and being a rebel and being a bit, making fun of others. And I wasn't buying any of that. So I obviously didn't. And like outside in the neighborhood, it was violence. The more violent you were, the more you were accepted in the group. And I didn't. Again, I'm a pacifist. I wouldn't. Didn't want to be part of those groups. So I was generally very good at making friends one-on-one. And I had a fantastic time with every single one of my triads over the years. And this all happened before high school. Once this friendship ultimately ended, once we went to high school, that actually last kind of breaking of the friendship, I became really depressed after this one. I was really, really sad because I generally cared about these people, right? But
Yeah.
I became really sad, and that was, and this is gonna be like a nice hero's arc, that was the reason almost the catalyst of why I got into self development, because I have gotten so down after losing this friend. Nothing happened other than this person just went to a different school and completely disappeared. It went from crying because we're no longer going to be at the same high school to just not wanting to hang out anymore. And that shocked me so much that it, kind of rethink everything about life, and who can I trust, who can't I trust. But also because, I had this vulnerability of feeling unsafe on my own, I felt the need that, okay, it's time to develop myself because nobody's going to be around. That's when I got into high school, and then everything changed from there in the sense of how I saw friendships. Like, that's a different phase. Equally interesting.
I want to say two things. I also had a situation where I was very close. It was from first till fourth grade in elementary school to with one girl. She moved. She moved out. She was still in same city, but just moved school. It was so strange. Literally, the moment she moved out, we stopped. Not moved out, but she moved school. We stopped having conversation. We stopped,
Mm.
inviting each other for birthdays. We stopped even saying hello to each other when we would see
Yeah,
each other later
exactly.
in the street. And it was weird because she was a very close friend, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that that was on her part. I don't remember details, but we just stopped putting effort.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It definitely makes me feel better. My inner child feels a bit more validated. But I feel like there is actually a lesson in those two situations, that sometimes people make friends to out of like social necessity. And once you're no longer
Yeah.
needed, they just easily discard it.
Yeah, but also another point, maybe those decisions were not on conscious level. Maybe we just, didn't know how differently to deal with it and how to, I don't want to say be a good friend, but try to stay in a friendship. So maybe if that happened later, we would react in a different way.
But that makes it even more fundamental, because if it's not thought through, then it means that it's just fundamentally how people function. And I think that's, the scary reality of seeing things clearly is that, yeah, maybe that's actually how things work. Sometimes, like, fundamentally, people would, before it goes through reason and through all these calculations of being a nice person and being moral, some people just think of friendships as utility, maybe at, because, like, we're social animals at the end of the day. We're
Yeah.
animals for the fact that we have these instincts, and social instincts is part of it. I must say, sometimes I thought I had no social instincts in my life, and people definitely doubted my social instincts. But then there are some fundamental things about social dynamics that are hard. But I think that's why conversations like these are useful, to talk about it so we can develop it.
I think also that's maybe the beauty of it, because can you imagine how your life would look like if you still have all the friends you've had and hang out throughout the time now, like to still be with all the friends. I think that's kind of beauty of
I
it, because in
I
some
think
there are
that's
some friendships that are like in seasons. You hang out, there was a specific, I don't know, maybe situation that brought you together that ended, and then you moved on. No hard feelings, you didn't fight, you just stopped communicating. You learned maybe something from them. There was a reason they were in your life, and then moved on. That happened
I
with my previous room.
Yeah, but the way you ask the question, I definitely think the world would be a better place if people learned to collaborate. And I think this wasn't an issue of, because, yeah, if I think about how my life would be if I still were friends with all the friends that I ever made, I think it would be wonderful. But what
I think
happens?
it would be overwhelming.
Well, I think you'll be great. The only issue is that we live in a country, at least I live in a country and you live in a similar country, but we live in a country where distrust and is been kind of built into the system, and people like the culturally fear being friends with others closely. For example, I lived around very close friendships with my mom and our neighbor that are basically best friends, and we've traveled with them, and they've been friends for years, but they still have this feeling of not relying on one another and having these invulnerable friendships. So I feel like it's a flaw of the system that people don't trust and regard friendship as just not, we're not taught culturally how to be good friends.
That's actually a very well said and very to the point. That's true.
Mm.
And another thing you mentioned was having friends like in groups and having
Hmm.
your triads. I've never had that apart from that first let's say, kind of group that we had, the four of us. And we were always like, two of us were closer, the other two were closer, but like the four of us. And after that, I was never part of groups, and I always wanted to be part of groups. And I was a little bit jealous when I started university, and somehow people were in a group, five, six of them. And I mean, at the end, I didn't regret not being part of a group, because at the end, those groups fell apart. And I kind of
Mhm.
I expected it, but I wanted to be part of a group, and just like, we are doing something together. All of us have a tradition. All of us are doing something. But I see that from my colleague at work and my close friend at the same time. She has this group now of like four or five of them, and she made these women because they were mothers of the kids who are going in the same kindergarten of her kids going. So
Mhm.
there's still hope. Tomorrow I'll meet some moms to hang out together.
Step one, become a mom.
Step one.
Kind of a high cost. Oh, that's fantastic. So, what I wanted to bring up now was talking about exactly that, which is becoming part of a group. Because I also didn't, I also avoided being part of groups for a while, and I wasn't a part of a group until high school, which I find very interesting because at first, I didn't try to be part of a group. And then when I went to uni, I did try to become part of a group, and I've learned some things about what works, what doesn't, and how you should generally go about it. I think the first thing that I've experienced is when you're generally being yourself, the right people get attracted to you being yourself. And when you're being yourself and you're open, you tend to be more charismatic, which is kind of why people want to add you to their group because they see you, because you allow yourself to be seen. But sometimes you can also be for reasons that are not so maybe pure, let's say. For example, I'm sure that when I was in high school, I was still very emotional. I was very, oh my God. When I entered high school, I was mortified to talk to people. So scared. Partly because of, that disappointment with the last best friend. Partly because I was part of very various groups where I didn't resonate, very kind of harsh groups in general, neighborhood and then middle school that was very harsh. And so then when I went to this school, I felt like, okay, I will not fit in again. It's fine. And I approached it, I was just scared to talk. But then there I found these friends where what happened here and what changed here that ultimately allowed me to have friends is I was in the right environment. The right environment where my natural abilities and my personality, the way it is, was something that was praised. So I went to this school it was the best in the town. So kids were very intelligent. And I think they would often, I mean, I don't think intelligence says anything, but it's just the way they were brought up was different and they were a lot more civilized. If in the neighborhood and in this posh middle school I was in, everything was about social dynamics and how much status you can acquire by being either rude to others or violent. In this school, in this place, the thing that was most valued was being intelligent. And I think they saw that really quickly, and hence why they invited me into their group, and I was very shy. Like I was for the first year I was in that high school, for 6 months or more, I was even scared to look them in the eye. I couldn't talk to them. And
Oh.
yet they were so kind to always say something nice or pay a comment, say something nice, or oh, you look so cute, or you're doing this or you're doing that. They were very positive and warm people, which for somebody that was bullied and all these things meant a lot. It meant that I could let my guard down. And I think that the whole high school experience, I had this feeling that not only like imposter syndrome, but there was parts of that, but also it was like I couldn't believe it. I was like, okay, why do these? But I didn't question it. I was just like, okay, fair enough. I'm going to join them. And there was always like, this group in the middle of the class, and they would hang out in breaks. And I think we were like one of the biggest groups in class. I don't know, something like 8, 9 people. And I didn't know all of them, but I ended up becoming friends with all of them over the years. But funnily enough, I still maintained like my one, best friend, or like a comfort friend. That was the person that was sharing my desk with. And I still kept kind of the thing, that security, that the way that I'm comfortable making friends, of having somebody that's, I'm more close to and more open to. But I was also learning how to be part of a group, which for me was different.
How were those friends different than close friends you had before? Because you mentioned that they were also very kind and that was comforting to you. So what was the biggest difference that you noticed and how you felt in those friendships?
I think in these friendships, I was a lot more independent this time around. What changed this time is that they weren't, I wasn't relying on them for protection or for support. You know, they invited me, but whereas in the previous friendships, I think there was an element of codependency, but in a
Hmm.
good way. It's like you're friends and you support each other because you can't really find support in the group. But this time, I mean, they have been friends since middle school. So this was an already existing friend group that held similar values. And what felt different this time is that I actually resonated with them. Whereas with the previous friends, I was friends with them out of circumstance. Yeah, in the previous friends, it was like this. It's like we kind of had to get along. Whereas with these people, it was we get along naturally because we believe in the same things. And that's what happened in the university, which led to me finding my friend group now, which was we met when at the Eco Hub. So during that time when I went to university, I also got out of my shell and I was learning how to be more myself. I mean, on the one hand, I was learning how to talk to boys, it just required me to just expose myself, not literally, but personally, really be brave and show who I truly am and befriend others. But it was a mix of, you're abroad, you don't know anyone, and it's university, you obviously try to make friends. And I just consistently was myself for a long time. And I'm kind of silly, I'm kind of, crazy sometimes. And I think that raised some eyebrows in the best possible way. Because if you show a lot of personality, I think people are like, okay, this person is fun to be around. So what happened is like by meeting one friend and another person in these like social environments, either at a class or in the department, I got invited to more and more things. So you'd be invited to a party, or you'd be invited to a group, or you'd be invited to an eco hub. And I was invited to be part of this garden. Basically, an eco hub is like an ecology group. We had this little farm in uni, and we had like a garden, and there were volunteers managing it. And I remember going there for the first time, and one of my very close friends now, Georgi, he was like just jamming some really cool music that I really liked. It was like exact genre that I like listening to. And all of them, like I basically became friends with the people that liked that sort of music, and then they ended up kind of inviting me to their events and meeting their friends. So, one saying is good friends lead to good friends. And if you meet one person that you resonate with, and if you're extrovert, if you like authentic and open, then you'd meet other authentic, open people that would also know other authentic, open people, and you get connected to those.
So since high school, you started being a social butterfly.
Since university, yeah, very much
Mm.
a social butterfly. But I feel like I don't think that's exactly who I am. I think I'm in between. Like I'm also introverted. I find my comfort people, and I like having one-on-ones. But I did learn how to behave in groups, and I found that the best way to do that is by really embodying your personality, not hiding.
I think that's especially the challenge when it's a group, because
Mm.
not challenge to show it. It's maybe easier when it's one on one, and
Mhm.
when it's group, like there, if I can say rules on quotes, you follow, or not that there are literal rules, but your behavior when you're in a group and when you're with just one friend, it's different.
But I think that's what exactly is the key. It shouldn't be different totally. Because, how I made the friends and enter groups was by being my most authentic self that I would often be in one on ones. It would just change the topics I talk about, but not, I mean, sometimes not even that.
Maybe depends on the group. Maybe
100%. That's why it's meeting your people that's important.
yeah. I never found my group.
Mm,
In a high school, I was very much opposite of you. I was only with my book. All the breaks between classes, I would spend either just chatting with the girl I was sitting. We became close friends after during that period, and after that, stayed friends. But I did have friendships. Tamara, the one that I mentioned last time,
mm-hmm,
we met in high school. We were in the same elementary school but different classrooms. And in high school, we started really being friends, and we connected on the topics, same topics and similar values that we had back then. It was lovely, but I wanted to be, hanging out with guys as well, but that didn't last. I don't know. Maybe because it wasn't much natural to me. I kind of wanted to, if I want to say, force it. And of course, it didn't last. So I was mostly with my books and hanging out with, few people here and there.
how was your high school? How did you feel about the environment?
I didn't like it. We weren't close group, generally classroom, because I know there are some classrooms there that are so connected and they do things together. We weren't like that. There were few separated groups. There's
Mm-hmm,
always a girl or two who are popular or want to be popular, wanting to be center of attention. Few guys who were always like a class clowns.
mm-hmm,
I didn't connect with any of them. I connected with few people, and I didn't want to, as you mentioned, didn't want to pretend that
mm-hmm.
I am this, like, I don't know, chic popular girl when I wasn't. I was a nerd. I was a nerd, and I was okay with that, and I didn't feel like I wanted to change it, and so I was like, okay,
You
yeah,
should be okay with that because nerds are the best. I found the
yeah.
best nerds.
So I was always, even when I would go to the center of the city with Maria, when we would meet for the weekends, and she was much more social than I was. We would go out together, and people knew Maria, and I was known as her friend. That was my title, being her friend. And I was annoyed anytime we would have to stop because she wanted to stop, say hi to people, talk with
Mm-hmm.
people, joke with people. I just wanted to move on, and I would have to,
Yeah.
literally like a kid who is annoyed that his mom has to say hi to someone. Uh, that was me while we
Yes.
were in high school.
Everybody has been in that situation, where you feel like you're the second person or you're, not the main character, which is very, I really wish people would get that experience. But I feel like that experience comes out of getting out of your comfort zone. Because even though I told you that I got into this high school and they were nice to me, I was kind of rejecting it for the entire 1 year because I was scared. I was so in my shell. And I was also like, I was in the breaks, I wouldn't talk to them. They would come up to me, but I wouldn't want to talk. I would like maybe focus on my homework or a book or texting something or being online. So I was also very kind of closed. But what happened is we really became close when I had heard in town that this project that my sister has been to called Grow was about to come up again, to be organized again. In that time I was like, okay, I was so focused on I need to get out of my shell, I need to fix this social anxiety. Let me go to this project because my sister was to it, and you meet international people, and it was organized by Isaac, and all these people from different parts of the world come in, and you get to have some really cool learning experiences. And I go there, and these some of the girls from this group in high school were there. At the time I was still scared to talk to them, and I was so scared to talk to them. I was so scared to talk to the internationals that came to visit. But I remember once there was one Egyptian girl that came to visit us. After the session, I was like, okay, I really want to talk to this person. She's gonna go back home. She's not part of my like social group. So if I embarrass myself in front of her, it's fine. And I remember she was waiting for the taxi, and I took the risk to start talking to her, even though I can barely talk to people in my own language, let alone in English. So I chat with her, and I survived that one experience. And because I showed myself that, okay, I can put myself out there and I'll survive, I'll be embarrassed, but I'll survive. Let's keep going. And during the period of this course that happened during summer for a few weeks, maybe 2 months, Some of the girls from high school were there as well, and some internationals. And we ended up, going out with the internationals, meeting people, going to these festivals, and being extroverted because that was the point of the project. And I was so overwhelmed with so much like fear, and I was still very shy. Like, there was this one crush that I had that I was so embarrassed to talk to him. He thought I was gay, because I was just so scared. He invited me out and I refused because I was scared. Like, it was it
Oh.
was as endearing as it could get. Yeah, and only after that I then kind of went and saw these experiences that would put me in the in social circumstances to train that muscle. And then yeah, ultimately I joined an NGO where there was like 60 people and there was always something going on, and I became more extroverted. It's a long story, but that's I feel helps. At least it helped me. What do you feel about that? How do you feel about that?
Having those organizations definitely help, being part of big groups. Again, my hometown was very small, is still very small. We didn't have, I don't want to say this is excuse, like there are people in my hometown who are part of groups, but precisely of these kind of organizations, there are some missed opportunities because we were living in
Hmm.
such a small town. That's why I think my whole if I can say glow up unquote
Yeah.
started when I was in when I started living in Belgrade, and my confidence started there. With Maria, we kind of switched roles. In Vranje, she was the socialized one. She was a social butterfly. In Belgrade, I had a best experience. Her beginning was not very. She was very self-conscious because we were from the south and we have a dialect specific
Hmm.
way we accent some things and people would make fun of her. I fortunately didn't have those experiences in university because most people are not from Belgrade and we all have some kind of dialect, some kind of accent that we speak. And I luckily didn't have that experience. Maybe that would affect something, but Maria started being a little bit shy and she started being self-conscious. And I remember a situation that was when I met some people from NGO. It was my first time meeting people from an organization, and those were Americans. And I met them
Whoa.
through yeah through a friend, and I started going to their I can say gatherings, their hangouts. Every once in a while, they would organize because I mentioned they're Americans, so they would organize cooking night to prepare how to make like American pancakes, or they would organize karaoke night or movie nights. And sometimes I would go because it was the beginning of me being social. I didn't feel comfortable going all the time
Why were you not comfortable going all the time?
because they were more turned to religion, talking about
Oh,
God,
okay.
and we had a little different views, and I didn't want that to affect the whole relation, but it's still because it was, it was weird. So eventually I stopped going, but there was a moment where I was trying to be a friend, and in one of those hangouts, I invited Maria to come for a karaoke night, and there were also people from Belgrade, from my dormitory I knew, and
Mhm.
I invited her to come, and she was so nervous. She wanted to sing a song that was so casual that night. It wasn't like you're going on stage and singing. People are not like chatting. Some people are eating. Half people are not paying attention. But it's just like fun. And even though that was the situation, she was very nervous to sing, and she has a beautiful voice. She sings very well, and she wanted to sing only if I was there with her. And I remember we went there together singing, and she was holding my hand so tightly because she was so nervous, and it was a new experience for both of us. That I was the one, if I can say, making friends and being more open and getting out of my comfort zone that you mentioned, and she was the one kind of closing to herself. And I remember we were having a conversation once. She said, I don't know how that happened, how I don't know how that's changed so much.
But that's such a cute thing because it just clearly shows how lovely it is to have a very long term friendship because they can see you as you evolve and you help each other in different stages. Sometimes you're more confident, sometimes the other person is more confident, and that's just like a beautiful relationship.
Yeah. Talking about long-term relationships, friendships, I mean, are you still friends with those people from those groups, or at least some people? The one you mentioned in high school, and then you started talking about groups you met in university.
It's been a while, and I think this is where like the natural aspect of outgrowing a group happens, or at least it happened to me, because nothing really happened. We just like, we graduated, people are in different parts of the country and they're doing different things. But one thing that happened in particular is that I ended up in high school, I ended up being very ambitious and heading into a certain direction. And because I was driven by my ambitions, I ended up separating myself from the group. I had a like you to be honest, it was a very fun group. I have like a lot of photos on my vision board with, the trips that we've been on with school, with going to the beach or New Year celebrations that we'd have in big groups. I think we celebrated New Year's like 3 times together or twice or something like that. And we'd always go out for coffee and talk, and that's outside of school. And I think that was a very good time. I have just like these beautiful photos on my vision board. So we had great times, like we were good friends. It's just that we went in different directions in life, and then I ended up becoming very ambitious, whereas they stayed in the country, and I think that was the main thing. I went abroad, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I was very ambitious, and that was the thing that I think it was a differentiating factor that made us. I try to like, for example, whenever I come back, I still visit them. I still like, for example, when I was in uni, I came back and I went to the west of the country to visit one of them, went to the festival and visited them in the capital and in my hometown as well. So I met them a couple of times. As life happens, when you live in a different part of the world, you change drastically. And I was so shocked. But so every time we'd meet up, I would always be changed a lot. And we could no longer kind of relate because they were living in the country, I was living outside. And they were not like into self development or stuff like that. So we couldn't quite, let's say, talk about that. But we
Mm,
keep in touch.
you said that you were being more interested in different things and different topics, and as you said, it is natural. Have you felt that, not with them specifically, but maybe with some other friends, that in any point in your life had a feeling that you have outgrown the person or the friendship?
Yeah, it's a good question for me because this is the one thing that happens to me a lot. In all the friendships that I had, there was always this phase of, moving direction and some friendships not being resilient enough to withstand that change. When I had best friend in the neighborhood in middle school and the other one in on the playground, all of them fell apart because of changes in circumstance. But then I think that's what makes adult friendships really, really beautiful because you have a different way of choosing your friends. You really choose your friends based on values, and that tends to be more outlasting. Let's say, for example, my friend group now. I'll give the story of how I met them. So we met in another graduate, my second year, and then I basically spent a whole year with them during my gap year, like seeing them 3 times a week or more. We had these like always had we were a very close knit group. We had a lot of parties, a lot of memories, a lot of get-togethers, and then we even had this is the funniest thing. We have like a little pamphlet. We had a whole society. Like we had a name for the friend group, and then we had this little booklet that one of our friends designed. And my friends were like a lot into spirituality and stuff, so they took an excerpt from Spirituality for Dummies, and we called it like the Society of this and that. And we have this beautiful like little book, and that's on my vision board, and it has all the signatures from people, from everybody, and it's really cute because like has principles of how to grow together as a group, how to how to like develop yourself, how to know yourself within a group, how to know yourself generally. So it was a very fulfilling friend group where I learned a lot. And that friend group lasted like, university ended, and then I went to my master's and moved to the other part of the country, and we still have the same friend group. And we had people come over we have these reunions, and people would come from different parts of the country, and we get together. And it's been maybe 5 years, 4 years, and it's still the same kind of friend group. When I went to uni to my masters and I changed unis, I was fortunate enough that we have this like person that's kind of the one that created the friend group, curated the friends in a way.
Mhm.
And he moved to Cambridge where I ended up studying, and I was visiting him. And actually when I did my interview, I was at his house, and I did my interview whilst visiting him and seeing everybody. So it lasted even during that transition. But I do feel like I am starting to change in a different direction a little bit. Whilst at the beginning, for example, if at the beginning what got us together was a shared value for authenticity, for creativity, for intelligence in a way, like people were interesting. They had a lot of hobbies and cultural knowledge in a way. People had different interests.
Mhm.
We're all very special kids with special interests. One was an artist, one was looking into anthropology, somebody was very interested in history, somebody was very interested in entrepreneurship. I was very interested in them, to be honest. I was very interested in getting to learn more about them. And I think that's one thing that has helped me make friends generally, was having this curiosity and not think about yourself that much when you go out. It's just curious. Okay, I'm going into a new situation. I'm going to a party. I used to do tours for the physics department, and we used to have these parents from like British kids who want to study at the university, and I was supposed to be the one entertaining British parents. There's nothing common between me and English parents that were like 40 and from a different country, but yet I was just curious.
I noticed that you have that ability to make a friend. It doesn't matter which age or stage in their life they're in or what they're interested in, you would find something to talk about, something in common, or something that maybe you're interesting to learn about, to be curious about the person. If you're in a conference or if you're in gathering or if you're in the group, because you've been in these lots of different social situations, and I think you're very good at it. That's why maybe networking is working really well for you.
Thank you. That's generally the approach you have to kind of just be an open person, because who wants to be friends with somebody that only talks about himself? And this is
True.
something that I see a lot in upper class friend groups. Sometimes there's like people who are very posh and they learn to just status signal all the time. I have friends who are posh but they're like genuine, so they actually can hold a conversation. But a lot of people try to pretend there's something that they're not. They pretend to be invincible. They pretend to have no flaw. And you can't relate to that. You just can't. So that's why I can't with those people. That's a different approach you need to have. But generally, and they usually struggle to make actual valuable friendships because it takes a degree of vulnerability. And I feel like our culture, Eastern Europe, it's kind of bad when it comes to that. Like we're good friends, but it takes a while to become close to us. People like really open up after months, and it takes a while to get to them. Whereas with this friend group, I think because we were all such a bunch of nutcases, we're just very weird, but we're friendly. The thing is, that's why I said I complimented you on being like nerdy, because nerds are usually very friendly people. They're easy to get along to as long as you're, interested in stuff.
You reached the point way earlier that I have. You were mentioning that when you were talking about friendships you met earlier in school, that you were like, okay, I'll talk with this person even if she thinks I'm weird, that's okay. I'll just be myself. I reached that point way later. That came way later for me. I guess it came with the confidence and being more self-conscious. I was okay with being maybe misunderstood. It was a very liberating thing to think like that,
How did you reach that point?
by being confident in who I was, by learning more about myself, who I was, and what I want from friendship, what I want from people, how I want people to. I understood the importance of energy around you, that there are people who draw on your energy. I never paid attention to that before. Again, it came with a lot of podcasting, reading, not specifically about friendships, but just generally relations. They say people are treating you how you treat yourself and how you allow them to treat you. I didn't understand that at first, but when I started doing therapy, oh my god, am I gonna mention therapy every single episode? I don't know. stay tuned to see.
It's
But
good. It's good.
it did have big, really big effect.
Yeah, I think people can do it both ways of just waiting to know yourself. And I'm sure that from now on, you've made more friends in times you've got to know yourself more than probably in the past.
Yes, but to be honest, it was also easier to cut friends
Hmm.
for that same reason. That happened to me this year. I kind of decided I don't want to invest in those friendships that I when I would notice that I was the only one trying to be friends and to keep the friendship, to see each other, to be in your life. Before, because I didn't want to fight and argue, and for the sake of having nice environment, nice relation, I would suppress some opinions and how I would feel, and then I would neglect them. And if something bothered me, for example, I wouldn't say it to give a specific situation. If it bothered me that a person wouldn't reach out to see each other, to hang out, to see how am I would not say that. And then when the person would reach out, I would be like, "Hi, hey, nice to talk to you again." And I would just go on as if it didn't bother me. And I decided this year I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to spend my time and energy on those friendships. And I don't see that as a bad thing, because it brought me relief. It brought me
Yeah.
peace. I was okay with the decision. I'm not going around and talking badly about them. I'm not remembering our friendship in a bad way, in any different way. We shared many beautiful moments.
You set a boundary. You set a boundary, and that's a normal thing to do in
Yes,
friendship.
I set the boundary. And the reaction that I got proved
Another.
me that I made a good decision, because people wouldn't acknowledge my emotions, and they wouldn't stop to think, okay, is this correct? Maybe if I was wrong, because I always approach with that, maybe I'm wrong, I'm open for a conversation. They would think that I'm pointing fingers, and I would always try to pay attention on how I'm approaching the person. And their response was always about them, and always a little bit of manipulation and a little bit of
Yeah.
disrespect, in a polite, nice way,
Yeah,
polite unquote.
gaslight. Yeah.
Gaslighting, that's right. And I was like, okay, great, great. I don't need that in my life. I was very happy that it stopped when it stopped.
That's part of really developing in your sense of what makes a good friendship and what doesn't. And it's key because you don't want to just make friends with everybody. You want to be respected equally.
That's right.
So what are for you some maybe what are for you the things that a friendship must have in order to meet your needs and meet your standards? Like what's a good friendship?
I don't think it's much different answer than what would a relationship be like. It's just a different level of intimacy, but all the other things, almost all the other things are the same, with mutual respect, with creating a safe space to be who
Mm-hmm.
you are. And there was one thing that Jay Shetty mentioned again that stuck with me, was that being understood by someone is overrated. And I started thinking about that and about friends, and how we have the tendency to say, I don't understand you, and therefore I don't know how to support you. I started talking that, literally saying, I don't need you to understand me. I'm okay if you don't understand me.
You just
I
need to meet me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
There was a recent situation discussion with Maria about something in my life, and she was keep repeating that, I don't understand. I just don't understand. I don't understand. I was like, I'm okay that you don't understand. You don't have to understand. It's not on you to have to understand. Don't put that on you, that you need to make sense of my behavior. It was very liberating to feel that, to have that, to know, to say that to a person as well.
It is because, that's the foundation of unconditional love. It's when I don't really understand you, but I love you. I'm there for you. I'm willing to support you. I'm willing to do what is needed to be a good friend so that, you can get over this, fix your situation or whatever you're dealing with or whatever you need at that point. So it's not so much about like understanding people, but knowing how to be there for others, which
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why your loyalty is paying off into such long friendships because maybe other people don't know how to have the same ability like you do. but you at least know how to be there for others in the long run, despite their changes and despite, not fully understanding them, but knowing how to support. And that's invaluable. That's what good friendship skills are like. And it's something that I personally need to get better at, because although I know how to make friends, I find it hard to maintain them. Maybe there's something we can go into. Yeah, I often don't know if I'm good at being a friend, because I'm not good yet at resilience in friendships. I mean, I'm not awful, but there are some things that I need to get better at. For example, there's some, as I've mentioned before, there's some uncomfortable emotions that sometimes come up, be it, for example, ego or jealousy, or maybe other things that jealousy wasn't on my part, but maybe other people's part, or maybe it's even on my part sometimes as well. But these feelings, they get into the friendship, and it's often hard to detangle them. It's hard to have the conversations around those things. And those are the moments where it really tests a friendship. So whilst I do have a lot of friends, very few of them have been tested. So I do have friends, but they're shallow. They're not necessarily shallow, but they're different. So I've learned over the years to have different types of friends and know how to set expectations for each of them. And then in line with those expectations, I'll have different standards. So for example, I have, let's say, a handful of friends that I deem as close. And because they're close, I'll hold them at maybe a higher standard. Like if something comes up, I will, because I'll expect more emotional closeness. We'll be more close. Hence, if something happens or something is important, or I feel disrespected in a certain way, I would like to fix it or reconcile it or have a communicate about it, because that's something that I'm thinking long term for this friendship. But I have lots of friends, like dozens of friends, who are just acquaintances. They're just fun friends. But those fun friends, I must say, they have been there for me when they could. Although I don't always rely on them, because maybe there are some values that I don't fully feel comfortable with. Maybe they're just so different that I can't be close to them, but I can learn from them. And hence the friendship is more one of learning, but there is the distance, if you know what I mean. And then sometimes they're just people that this is like the third category, that's most distanced, most separated. If there's just connections, a connection in my eyes is just a person that I think people do that a lot at networking events, is like you'd like to be like to socialize with someone and to be in good connections with that person, but it's more professional. It's more political in a way. It's more based on like status signaling than like anything else. It's what I've seen a lot in networking events, where people just go there to meet other influential people, so they have them in their books in case something happens. That's a connection. That's just a strategic thing. That's not really connection, emotional at least. So for those different people, I'd have different expectations. I would not expect my business friends to care about. Like, I would not expect my connections to give a damn about my well-being. So that's like one of the kind of how I triage them. My fun friends are fun friends, but there's a certain limit where I know I can't really open up, because as you mentioned, I think you outgrow the people that are not like you. People that are very similar to you, they kind of can withstand me, at least in my case. I can stay friends for longer with people that are more like me, but that's also not guaranteed. So I have different expectations from each of them. And then if, for example, I have a disagreement with a close friend, I'll be more likely to have the conversation, if you know what I mean. Whereas my fun friends, I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I relate to that. I have people who I see a few times a year. We are very, like, we have long friendships, but it's not that deep. I don't, because I
Mm-hmm.
need that closeness. I need to see you more, to connect with you more. I mean, not literally in person, but at least from video chat, or like what we're doing, having those constant messages and voice messages and video chat. I feel more connected to you on a deeper level than on friends that I see more often than I see you in person. It's important to know that difference, to not force yourself, that, or like not force, but not to beat yourself up that you don't feel maybe that there is a depth in a friendship if those are, as you said, your fun friends, or if it's a business acquaintance. Because if you don't, you would be stuck in probably in thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make better connection and be better, maybe not better friend, but close friend with this person? it's just not that type of friendship.
Yeah. No, and it's also like you act differently. You act differently and you connect differently. I think what people really think about when they think about like a big groups don't form because you're emotionally deep. Big groups form because they're spending group time with each other. And that's more like being fun or being entertaining. It's something external, it's not internal. It's like if you know how to externally act, then yeah, it's like a group will form. You'll be part of a social group. But that takes like learning. It's kind of learning how to be an entertainer. Whereas connecting with people and the friendships that actually matter in the end are the ones who are deeply known. One thing that I'm trying to get better at, and I often worry about because I value friendships so much. You know, we have this saying where you're cruelest or like you're the worst version of yourself with the people closest to you because they get to know you deeper and they're closer to you. They get to see not only when you're good, but also when you're bad. You know, they get to see your qualities, but also your vices.
Yeah.
With your family members, you know, they know the good and the bad. One thing that I fear and I try to get better at, and I don't know fully how to, when I have a close friendship, if something happens, like a conflict happens, how do you reconcile? How do you do conflict resolution? How do you do it, Jovana? Because you seem to have had your fair share of that.
Open communication, communicating, because we had
Oh.
at the beginning of podcast, I mentioned that some moments, those were the moments, that was a period where I was going to therapy. Our friendship developed in some ways that we, at least I didn't expect it to. In some ways we became more distant. In some ways, while going on those sessions, I was aware of some behaviors that were irritated me, and some Maria's approaches through therapy learned how to communicate, first to know within myself, to know what exactly why it annoyed me. I knew, but I don't want to go in depth now because it will leave us in a way
No, no, no.
different direction. But I understood why it was annoyed, and I communicated that with. I allowed myself to have that, to be okay with our friendship developing and how it developed in that moment, to have that phase when we weren't so close and we were talking
I think
about
that's
that.
no, that's healthy. Yeah, that's super
Yeah,
healthy.
we talked.
I have the opposite problem. Like I communicate too much, whereas which I seen like there is attachment theory. It's used also in friendships, like applies also to friendships. And you have sometimes friends who are more avoidant. They tend to not really open up, share their emotions, keep to themselves. And you have more anxious friends who if you're silent, we become anxious, and then we force you to talk, and we demand more and more and become more and more anxious, and we talk and we yell and we are become more verbal. I am the second type that's like anxiously attached. So in my relationships and friendships, I tend to be the one that notices. I'm always the one that sees problems early. I'm not the type that is patient and sees it but kind of pushes it aside and waits. But I think that's also a good quality. Whilst it's important to communicate, yes, it's also important to be patient and to have what you have, because being patient with someone is the highest level of acceptance you can kind of show, because you let the person evolve the way they do, but then when the time is right, you set your boundary. And it's kinder than what people like me would do, which is immediately bring up the issue. I have successfully brought up some issues with some friends.
Mhm.
There was one case where I sometimes, we go through these phases, but I sometimes have issues with imposter syndrome, but also like insecurity. And I get these bouts where I become super insecure. And in those times, I tend to, obviously, that would impact my friendships. And at the time, one time, I was like very insecure about the fact that sometimes people would become friends with me just because they saw I have success, and then they would just want me as for success and not to be friends. And I couldn't determine, like I couldn't tell which one it was. And that sort of this the duality, the black and white of it, made me really anxious. And I was like, okay, I had to bring this up to this friend. I was like, look, I feel like whenever we talk only about this and that, status related, success related, but yet I want us to be friends, and I want us to talk about things that are more emotionally intimate than just success. There was that distance that was very professional with the person that I thought was a close friend. So I brought it up, and they realized, they saw the thing. They understood my point of view, but I also kind of expressed that need, and it helped and it was useful. But with some people, it is very hard to do that because, they may get triggered, or it's annoyingly sometimes bad communication can lead to friendships being destroyed, but also communicating in a way that's not good also helps. So I think it just depends on the type of person.
Yeah, but if something bothers you, if you have any doubts or fears about the person or friendship, it's on you to communicate that based on how they react, and if they make an effort or not, you'll know what to do next and how to react next. I guess with those friendships, I don't know how that was in your case, but I'm guessing that in cases where friendships are not honest from one person, if they're there just to use you or something from you, they wouldn't last for long anyway.
No. This one lasted, fortunately enough, because this was the case of a person they were accustomed to talking to people in a very, professional, shallow way, and I pushed against that. So they were like coming from the right reasons, but they just didn't know how to relate. But you're completely right. Sometimes you really need to and this is part of making friends, is being able to assess other people and to read people well, because if you can read the person, then you know when to lower your standards when needed.
Yeah, but that you get from experiences.
Yeah. I'm thinking of doing a section of just rapid fire questions where we answer in like one sentence.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, first question, what do we think makes a friendship healthy?
Oh my God. The worst question for rapid fire. Open communication, and I'll steal yours, being patient.
Okay. What do you think makes a friendship healthy? Vulnerability,
Oh, I love that one.
quality time, and patience. Trust. What does it mean for us to be a good friend?
To learn maybe how not to judge person even if we disagree with what they're doing or their opinions. It's similar thing to we don't have to understand them. We don't have to agree and be aligned in something that if it's something that affects them.
I love that. For me, to be a good friend would be, I'll contradict you on what you said, is to understand me, to get to understand, to like try to understand me so then I can understand myself. It's that part of curiosity. What biggest boundary for you in relation?
Oh, biggest boundary. You go first. I don't know.
Talking about me behind my back.
Ah, you mean like
Red flags, like something.
okay. This is in any relation trying to force me to think the way you think.
What's the most important thing you value in friendship? For me, it's getting to know each other. It's exploration. It's shared life in a way.
Yeah, I'll steal the answer.
Glad we agree. Ooh, best way to create deeper connections with friends, like an activity or something.
Do an activity together. For example, a few times I hosted friends. I made popcorn, and I bought some small canvases and we painted together. Or like baking together, for example, or candle making together, or going to a workshop together. Like any kind of activity, doing it together.
Yeah, that's really good. I will say something similar. Travel, like any trip, any something. It's really cool. That's how we became friends.
Yes.
And last but not least, if there was any tip you want to give somebody about making friends as adults, what would it be? My answer would be to be open and be yourself courageously, with all your courage.
Kind of force yourself to be in a situation where you would meet people, because it's not just gonna come to you if you're just sitting in the house or not being, as you said, open.
Yeah, that's no good. Like go to events, go to classes, go to courses.
Yeah, be in situations where you would talk with someone.
It's a very good practical point. Awesome. Well, with those nuggets of knowledge, I think we can finish up the podcast. It was an amazingly deep podcast. It was very fun. I feel like I got to learn more about you, Jovana.
Same as well. And we thought it's gonna be a short one.
It's the longest one we've made. Well, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, send us some questions. If you want to be on the podcast, I think we already have a follow-up. And you can get in touch with us on Instagram and TikTok, mostly on Instagram at Chicas Plus Equal, and also on Spotify and YouTube. And we hope you enjoyed this episode and talk to you soon.
Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.